Hello there, weary traveler. Tonight we start with something more unhurried than your average morning stretch. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a hidden Nubian oasis, where date palms lean in as if whispering secrets to one another. The air feels cool against your skin, yet you sense the desert's warmth just beyond the green fringe, a gentle reminder of the vast sands waiting to cradle the sunrise. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Feel free to drop your location and local time in the chat, so we can drift together from every corner of the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step forward, barefoot on the soft, damp earth, listening to the soft chatter of early risers in the healer community. In this remote corner of Nubia, healer families have awakened with the sun for millennia, tuning their bodies to the rhythms of birds and flowing water rather than alarm clocks. Mainstream historians note that Nubian settlements along the Nile date back over 6,000 years, making these morning rituals some of the oldest living traditions on the planet. Your first sensation is the gentle thrum of the oasis. Water trickles through shallow channels, reflecting gold-gilded dawn. Date palms tower overhead, fronds whispering like old friends sharing sleepy gossip. You bend down to feel the cool moisture seeping up between your toes, a small surprise. Since most people imagine endless dunes when they think desert. Here, life clings stubbornly to every drop of water. Ahead, a line of healers moves with measured calm, carrying woven baskets and clay jars. Each basket holds perfectly ripened dates, their skins glistening like amber beads. A quirkier sight, some elders wear necklaces strung from date pits, believing these charms ward off sand fleas during midday work, a tradition that makes you smile, imagining ancient healers swatting invisible bugs instead of emails. You join the procession, inhaling the heady scent of crushed palm leaves and earth. A healer nudges you gently, it's time for the opening invocation. Soft voices rise in unison, intoning an ancient blessing to the oasis spirit before any blades of grass have caught the sun. Historians still argue whether these rituals originated independently or were borrowed from nearby Egyptian temple rites, since the lines between Nile cultures have always been as fluid as the river itself. After the blessing, you watch as the youngest apprentices imitate the elders, fumbling slightly with clay cups as they fill them from a nearby basin. The water is cool and tastes faintly of mineral-rich silt, oddly refreshing, like sipping an artisanal mineral water in a luxe spa, but without the price tag or awkward small talk. A soft breeze tugs at loose hair, and you realize this is the only meeting you'll ever attend where everyone's late because they couldn't resist a second round of date sampling. Your guide, a healer whose calm smile makes you feel instantly welcome, leads you to a low, stone platform beneath a cluster of palms. Here, morning preparations begin in earnest. Clay pots are arranged in a precise semicircle, each filled with sun-soaked dates, sprigs of desert thyme, and handfuls of crushed millet grains. You lean closer, noticing a faint sparkle on some date skins where healers have rubbed them with crushed quartz powder, believing it enhances the remedy's efficacy, a fringe belief you quietly file away as one of those only in ancient desert communities facts you'll probably hallucinate later in a dream. The platform sits next to a narrow irrigation trench that channels water from the main oasis pool. Your guide dips a long wooden ladle into the trench, harvesting a cool stream of water so clear it seems to glow before it drips into the frontmost pot. You're told this specific spot circulates the freshest water each morning. Filtered naturally through rows of date palms like a giant living coffee filter, no drip machine required. You settle on a woven mat beside the platform, feeling the faint warmth of sun-kissed palm fibers beneath you. The community's morning ritual is deceptively simple on the surface: gather, bless, prepare, but each gesture carries layers of intention. When the water level in the pots reaches just above the dates, the lead healer places a slender sprig of thyme into the first pot and murmurs a phrase in the Nubian tongue. Apprentices follow suit, their voices hushed with concentration. You dare not speak, too entranced by the hypnotic repetition. A distant babble of conversation drifts across the oasis, who caught the earliest fish yesterday, who spotted the first falcon dive. When you finally look up, you notice a lone heron gliding across the shallow channel, wings nearly grazing the water, an elegant punctuation to the morning's hush. You can't help but chuckle softly. Birds here seem to appreciate a good wellness routine as much as the healers do. Once the time is snug among the dates, the entire group takes a breath and leans back, letting the fragrance swirl among them. You inhale deeply, tasting sweet fruit, herbal earthiness, and the faintest hint of river mist. It's like front row seats at a sensory symphony, but without the sticky concert hall floor or overpriced snacks. This opening ritual sets the tone for the entire day. As the sun climbs higher, you can almost feel its gentle heat turning the pots into miniature cauldrons of sleepy comfort. You sip a small amount of water from your own clay cup, marveling at how something so simple, water filtered through palm roots, can taste like pure calm. You glance around at the healers, their faces serene, eyes half closed in contentment. There's no rush to start the more laborious tasks. For now, they simply absorb the morning's energies, letting the oasis spirit infuse their bodies before they grind herbs and crush seeds. You follow their lead, closing your eyes for just a moment, letting the desert lull you into a deeper state of relaxation. As your senses settle, you realize how perfectly this slow-paced ritual suits your sleepy mood. No alarms, no buzzing phones, just the oasis breathing around you, the soft chants fading into the whisper of palm fronds. You tuck your hands into your lap, ready for whatever comes next in this gentle desert journey, knowing that the morning's calm will carry you into the heart of the healer's craft. You open your eyes to the gentle warmth of the sun inching higher above the oasis canopy, and you realize your palms still tingle with that lingering morning calm. Now, you're ready to trace the very beginnings of these sweet desert dates, whose amber glow captivated healers long before the first mortar struck the first pestle. Desert dates, Phoenix dactylifera, have been cultivated in the Nile Valley since around 4000 BCE, surviving shifting climates and empires in equal measure. As you wander toward a low alcove carved out of sandstone, you spot a series of faded wall carvings almost hidden in the shade. They depict figures clad in linen robes offering clusters of dates to a regal woman wearing the traditional crown of Lower Nubia. Mainstream historians agree that these murals date to around 2000 BCE, underscoring just how deep these dates' roots run in the region. Legends swirl around these carvings like desert dust. One tale says the goddess Neith wept tears of honey that fell onto the sand and sprouted into the first date palms. Another whispers of wandering Bedouin shepherds who discovered a single wild palm in the dunes, its fruits so succulent they believed it a gift from a sleeping jinn. You let your fingertips glide over the carvings, feeling the faint grooves of ancient tools, and you can almost imagine the sculptor pausing to sample a date mid-carving, probably the world's first quality control test. As you step back, you notice a small cluster of succulent offshoots at the carving's base. These are called pups in modern horticultural terms, baby palms that sprout from the parent tree's roots. Healers taught younger apprentices to snip these with a sharpened reed blade, then transplant them near new irrigation channels. This simple vegetative propagation allowed date palms to spread rapidly, creating oasis groves that sustained entire communities. It's amazing to think that a few intentional cuts and reburials in sandy soil yielded what feels like endless supplies of sticky sweetness. Further along the rock face, you spot a more whimsical scene, a tiny figure juggling 3 dates while perched atop a coiled cobra. You raise an eyebrow, surely a fringe image from a more playful era. A local storyteller later explains that this motif symbolizes the date's perceived power to ward off venom. The idea was that if you could safely joggle a date near a snake's head, you'd prove its fruit had lethal antidotal properties. You chuckle at the image. Balancing ambrosial fruit over a snake is a guaranteed way to make you reconsider your life choices. Pausing to rest against a carved niche, you feel the sandstone's surprising coolness still holding the night's chill. Above you, clusters of date palms rustle, as if gossiping about your visiting presence. You breathe in the mingled scents of dried fruit and warm stone. It strikes you that much of what we consider science today grew from these trial-and-error practices. Healers observed effects, soothing stomach cramps, easing coughs, and over generations refined their brews. Some dates were left to ferment slightly, others soaked in herbal infusions, all of it an empirical dance long before microscopes or lab coats. You move on to a sunlit courtyard where a small garden spreads out. Here, the soil is dark with composted palm husks, and every row of young palms stands tethered to thin stakes, an early version of stake and drip irrigation. You kneel to examine the soil, noticing it's been enriched with crushed shells from the Nile, providing calcium and trace minerals. This practice links to early botany, suggesting healers recognize the connection between soil health and plant vigor. It's comforting to think that even in the vast, unyielding desert, minds millennia ago had already begun experimenting with sustainable growing methods. A narrow trough cuts through the garden, channeling water from early morning dew captured on palm fronds. You press your ear to the wood and hear a soft gurgle, a tiny reminder that water, precious, elusive water, is central to every step of date cultivation. You can't help but joke inwardly that nothing ruins a desert spa day faster than a leaky irrigation channel. Just beyond the garden, you find a circle of stones surrounding a single, ancient palm. Its trunk is twice your height and riddled with bark scars from centuries of harvests. This is considered the mother tree, from which many of today's date varieties descend. Local lore claims that priests once slept in its hollowed trunk chambers to receive prophetic dreams. While mainstream botanists attribute modern date cultivars to selective breeding rather than mystical revelation, you can't help but appreciate how closely myth and practice entwined here, myth acting as both poetic license and mnemonic device. You run a hand along the mother tree's gnarled surface. Beneath the coils of vine-like fiber, you feel the rhythmic pattern of harvest scars, proof of countless harvest seasons. The healers believe that each scar adds to the tree's potency, a belief that merges observation. Older trees often yield larger fruit clusters, with symbolism, injury bringing strength. As you lean your head against the trunk, you taste a distant memory of yesterday's brew and feel a subtle pulse, as though the tree itself is humming its approval. A nearby apprentice beckons you to try crushing a date with a ceramic pestle on a stone slab. The sweet, sticky pulp oozes between your fingers, and you watch as tiny specks of pollen from desert flowers mix with the pulp, an accidental blend that likely led to early herbal experiments. You wipe your hands on your linen robe and laugh softly. Sticky clothes seem to be a recurring theme in ancient healing practices. As you dab at your sleeve, a healer passes by carrying a small leather flask filled with date-infused oil. They explain that this oil, heated gently and mixed with powdered clay, was applied as a topical salve for sunburned skin and minor cuts. You dab a drop on your forearm, and the oil feels warming without burning, like a gentle hug for your skin. It's a mainstream therapeutic approach combining emollient properties and mild antiseptic action, simple chemistry that predates modern dermatology by thousands of years. You stand back and take in the scene, the mother tree, the babe sprouting at its roots, the garden of experimental offshoots, and the engraved murals whispering stories of gods and serpents. All of it converges into a single narrative, one where myth and early botany waltz together under the desert sun. You lean against the cool sandstone again, closing your eyes as the wind rustles the palms above. For a moment, you taste the breeze like a sip of iced date wine, sweet, slightly fermented, and oddly refreshing in the midday heat. When you open your eyes, the oasis feels more alive than ever, as though the stories carved in stone and the legends whispered by elder healers have seeped into every leaf. Everything you've seen so far makes perfect sense. Dates weren't just food or remedy, they were a bridge between the earthly and the divine, a kernel of magic in the vast desert expanse. You smile, anticipating the next step, harvesting these life-giving fruits amid the shifting sands themselves. You rise before dawn's first glow, stepping off the stone platform and into a world of rolling dunes where every grain of sand seems alive, shifting beneath your sandals like a living map that redraws itself with every breeze. The date palms of the oasis stand behind you, their silhouettes fading as you climb into the open desert, guided by a pair of veteran gatherers whose footsteps carve a narrow path through the soft sand. By the time you reach the outer skirts of the grove, the pale light of dawn has painted the sky in whispers of rose and gold. Here, amidst the towering dunes, date palms grow in small clusters, each one like a green mirage promising sweet relief. You learn that these palms are what scholars call sidra, wild cousins of the cultivated Phoenix dactylifera, and that nomadic tribes first harvested wild date clusters in this very manner over 5 millennia ago. Even now, skilled gatherers follow ancestral routes, tracing the same swirling patterns that wind through the dunes like secret scripts. Your guide, Amara, pauses at a saddle of sand where 2 dunes meet, forming a natural hollow. "Feel the air here," she whispers. You close your eyes and sense a faint shift in wind tension. This tiny pocket shelters moisture trapped overnight, making it a prime spot for palms to anchor deeper roots. You cup your hand over your eyes to glance at the horizon and spot 3 slender trunks rising like watchful sentinels. Reaching one of the palms, you crouch down to inspect the base of its trunk, brushing away fine sand to expose shallow scars. These are cut marks from old harvests, clear signs that other gatherers preceded you, proof that the desert offers up its bounty only to those who know its hidden codes. You run your fingers over the scars, marveling at how the palm heals itself over time, thickening its bark into protective armor. Above you, the dates hang heavy in dense clusters, their skins taut and sun-kissed. Instead of ripe reds or amber tones, these wild dates shimmer in dusky purple hues, signaling that they're ready for harvest. Amara hands you a slender wooden hook, carved from acacia wood, and shows you how to slide it between the fruit and the stem, gently twisting until the stalk releases. You try it, and the hook connects with a soft scrape, then, pop, the entire cluster detaches in your hand, the dates brushing against your palm like a benediction. As you gather more clusters, you notice how each date differs. Some yield easily, others cling stubbornly, like that one pair of socks you can never pull off without turning them inside out. You press a date between your thumb and forefinger, it bursts with sticky sweetness, and you can't resist popping it into your mouth. The flavor is smoky and complex, with hints of caramel and a whisper of desert wind. Your guide laughs softly at your delighted expression, teasing that new gatherers often forget to finish the job because they get lost sampling. With baskets filling fast, you follow Amara to a wind-swept ridge where dunes glitter with scattered quartz pebbles. These stones reflect the light in dazzling spurts, and she explains that elders once believed quartz held solar energy, charging dates with extra vitality if harvested nearby. It's a fringe belief, she concedes. But you admit you wouldn't argue if your morning tonic suddenly felt supercharged. Balancing the laden baskets on your hip, you trek back down the ridge, feeling the weight shift with every step, like carrying a treasure chest of tiny suns. The wind tugs gently at your sari robe, a tribute to modern travelers borrowing local style, and you realize that navigating dunes isn't just about following footprints, it's about reading wind patterns, understanding which slopes have recently shifted, and anticipating where sturdy ground lies beneath. Amara points out a faint curve in the sand, an ancient animal trail, likely used by foxes or gazelles, that offers slightly firmer footing. You follow it, stepping lightly to avoid the soft date pitfalls where your foot would sink calf-deep. A sudden gust whips up a mini sandstorm, sending tiny crystals ricocheting against your skin. You bristle, but Amara merely shrugs and raises her hand, letting the wind swirl around her like a cloak. It polishes the sand, she says with a grin, and gives dates that extra desert tang. You squint through the haze, feeling like a character in an action movie who forgot to check the weather app. When the storm subsides, you find yourself at the mouth of a small canyon, its walls etched with windswept ridges that trace centuries of shifting dunes. Here, the air is still, and you set your baskets down, crouching to examine a particularly ancient palm whose trunk is split by a deep vertical fissure. Amara explains that this fissure marks the tree's response to extreme drought decades ago, yet it survived, a testament to its resilience. You tap the bark, and a soft hollow echo answers, as if the tree itself is sharing its secret. Feeling playful, you prod the fissure and a small swarm of desert beetles scuttles out, scuttling across the sand in a hurry. You jump back, laughing. No date-gathering excursion is complete without an unplanned insect encounter. The guide reassures you, though, the beetles help breathe life into the soil around the palm, breaking down dead leaves and enriching the earth, a vital though overlooked partner in this desert ecosystem. Baskets now heavy with fruit, you and Amara begin the trek back to the oasis, skirting around soft drifts and ducking under low-hanging fronds of tamarisk trees. As you walk, she tells you how gatherers memorize dozens of palm clusters by feel alone, size, weight, and even the sound of the cluster brushing against the hook. New apprentices often botch their first dozen picks, grabbing underripe or overripe fruit, but experienced hands know exactly which clusters yield the sweetest brews. You close your eyes and imagine picking by touch, the gentle pop of a ripe date, the dull thud of an underripe one, the hollow rattle of dried-out fruit. It becomes a near-zen practice, a meditation in motion that slowly quiets your mind. You realize harvesting isn't just about collecting food, it's a sensory ritual that aligns you with the desert's rhythms, teaching patience and presence in each measured movement, by the time you return to the oasis's edge. Your arms are sore, and your baskets brim with a dozen heavy clusters. You feel a delicious ache, like the kind you get after learning to play a new chord on guitar. The healers greet you with soft smiles, recognizing the familiar earthen scent of freshly harvested dates. You tip your head back and laugh, grateful for the lilies and lattes commute you didn't have. No traffic jams here, just you, the sand, and the unhurried pulse of the desert. They help unload your bounty, stacking the clusters in woven trays to dry under the midday sun. You step back, wiping sweat and sand from your brow, gazing at the golden fruits now resting in neat rows. It feels like you've completed a pilgrimage, connecting with centuries of gatherers who first drew life from these dunes. As you settle into the shade again, you realize that you've learned more than harvesting technique. You've experienced how the desert invites you to slow down, to breathe, and to listen. The sun climbs overhead, beginning the next chapter of the healer's day, but you merely smile and take a final, long look at the shimmering palms, ready for whatever comes next in this serene, sun-kissed odyssey. You follow the gentle clatter of clay jars being carried across the oasis courtyard, feeling the midday sun warming the stone under your sandals as you prepare to delve into the secrets of pure desert water. Here, water isn't simply found, it's coaxed like a shy friend who needs a cup of mint tea before they'll open up. Healers in Nubia perfected filtering and storage methods over thousands of years, adapting to droughts that could last seasons. You're about to learn how they turn scarce desert moisture into the lifeblood of their remedies and daily lives. First, you're led to a shaded alcove beside a low, domed structure of mud brick. This is a fog collector, an ingenious device the healers call the spider's veil. Mainstream researchers note that early fog nets appeared along the Red Sea coasts, but here, thousands of miles from the ocean, local healers repurposed palm fronds draped on angled frames to trap dew-laden air each dawn. As you watch, tiny beads of moisture coalesce on the woven fronds and trickle down into a trough. You lean closer, mesmerized by the rhythmic drip-drip that feels like nature's own ASMR track, while you daydream of installing one on your balcony in case of a city water outage. Your guide explains that the spider's veil can yield up to 2 liters per morning if conditions are right, enough to fill a dozen clay cups for later brewing. The fronds are replaced weekly and sun-dried to prevent mold. Yet some elders still insist that a small spritz of date honey on the fibers improves condensation, a belief you classify as charmingly impractical but oddly delightful. You tuck that away as your daily fun fact. Next, you move to the heart of the oasis, an underground cistern hidden beneath woven mats and palm leaves. The entrance is a narrow hatch that you duck under, stepping down into a cool, dim chamber where the air smells faintly of damp earth and crushed limestone. This cistern dates back at least 2 millennia, built when Nubian kings commissioned engineers to carve out rock to capture seasonal floodwaters. Mainstream archaeologists agree that these cisterns provided reliable reserves during dry months, and local lore claims that each cistern has its own mood. Some resonate with a low hum when full, others whisper when nearly empty. You press your ear to the stone wall and swear you hear a soft, rhythmic vibration, like a buried heartbeat. You smile, wondering if it's just your imagination or the cistern joining in your ASMR quest. Nearby, a series of small clay filters stand ready, shallow bowls layered with coarse sand, activated charcoal from date pit fires, and fine crushed limestone. You scoop water from a small channel leading into the cistern and pour it slowly through the layers. The water emerges nearly crystal clear, the charcoal removing bitterness and the limestone infusing trace minerals. Your guide tells you that charcoal filters were borrowed from Egyptian temple practices, while the limestone came from nearby quarries, fusing two worldviews into one seamless system. You dip a finger in and taste the filtered water, smooth, faintly sweet, with a ghost of minerality that makes you feel surprisingly sophisticated for someone kneeling on dusty ground. A fringe belief floats by. Some elders whisper that if you stir the water 3 times clockwise with a date pit, you'll banish summer fevers from your home. You imagine yourself standing at your kitchen sink in an urban high-rise, date pit in hand, stirring water as your neighbors stare. You chuckle at the thought and let that curiosity drift away like a wisp of sand. Climbing back into the light, you discover a row of leather-skin water flasks hanging from a date palm frond. These water skins are as old as the earliest trade caravans, sewn meticulously from goat hides and tanned in tannin-rich bark liquids to prevent souring. Each flask holds about a liter, and the leather acts as a natural insulator, keeping water cool for hours. You lift one flask gingerly, and the contents slosh quietly, the sound reminiscent of a slow heartbeat. You press the flask against your forehead and marvel at how the leather's coolness soothes you, like a compress applied by a spa attendant who never speaks above a whisper. Your guide encourages you to pour a small amount into a clay cup. And you notice that leather-touched water carries a faint earthy aroma, almost like the metal tang of walking through a forest after rain. It's a sensory detail you'll carry back to your daily routine, alongside your morning coffee perhaps, just to remind yourself of this oasis calm. Next, you're shown a subterranean channel, carved with precision beneath the courtyard. It directs overflow from the cistern into a series of shallow basins, each lined with reed mats. Here, water seeps into the ground, recharging a hidden aquifer that feeds the healer community's shallow wells. These recharge ponds are a marvel of sustainable engineering. Each basin's reed mat filters debris and reintroduces water slowly, avoiding sudden surges that could collapse the fragile channels. You step around the basin's edge, feeling the damp reeds beneath your fingertips and noting how even the slightest tilt can speed or slow the filtration, a testament to these healers' mastery of microengineering. One apprentice jokes that they could build a rooftop version for city apartments using hanging plants and misting nozzles. You picture your balcony transformed into a mini oasis, complete with date palms growing in ceramic pots and fog nets strung across the railing. It's a whimsical scene that feels both absurd and oddly soothing, like a bedtime daydream engineered by desert wisdom. Finally, you arrive at the storage house, a low-slung building with thick mud walls that hold interior temperatures 20 degrees cooler than the midday air. Inside, rows of sealed clay jars stand on packed earth shelves. Each jar is airtight, sealed with date palm fiber and resin, preventing evaporation for months. You crouch to examine a label etched in soot, Season 21 Harvest. Inscriptions note the date of harvest, weather conditions, and even celestial alignments, since some healers believe that water filtered during a waxing moon holds superior life force. You raise an eyebrow at lunar filtration but can't deny how ritual elevates routine. You taste water from a jar labeled Waxing Crescent, after sandstorm, and it somehow feels richer, as though carried on currents of starlight. The guide winks. Shall we call it moon water? You suppress a groan at the pun but secretly appreciate the charm. Sauntering back into the courtyard, you cradle a cup of freshly drawn oasis water and feel its cool weight like a secret talisman. Each sip is a blend of centuries of practice, myth, and the desert's unspoken generosity. As you savor the final trickle, you realize these water sourcing methods aren't just practical, they're rituals in themselves, blending science and spirit to craft something rare, pure, calm-inducing liquid amid the world's driest reaches. You settle back on a low wooden stool beside the stone platform, feeling the gentle warmth of the sun that's begun its slow climb toward midday. Before you sit a row of clay pots, each brimming with the key players of the healer's signature brew, spiced dates, desert herbs, wild blossoms, and powdered minerals. Today, you'll learn how these humble ingredients come together to create a tonic reputed to soothe everything from restless limbs to overactive minds. First, your guide lifts a small woven basket filled with dates hand-picked at dawn. These aren't just any dates, they're fragrant marum varieties, meaty fruit known for their delicate, honeyed flesh. Mainstream historians note that marum dates were prized across Nubia and ancient Egypt. Often used as tribute to pharaohs and queens for their superior taste and medicinal value. You lean forward, inhaling their cinnamon-sweet aroma, and jokingly wonder if your morning latte could ever taste so regal. Next comes the spice blend, a mix of crushed cardamom pods, cinnamon bark, and a pinch of ground black pepper. You watch as an apprentice delicately crushes pale green cardamom seeds under a mortar and pestle, the aroma bursting into the air like fireworks at twilight. Cardamom, you learn, was traded along the Red Sea port routes as early as 1500 BCE, prized both for flavor and believed to aid digestion. You pop a seed into your mouth and feel it crack beneath your molars, unleashing a bright, floral scent that makes you imagine yourself sipping tea in a dimly lit caravanserai. Then, a wooden scoop reveals a handful of dried desert thyme, zeder, its slender leaves boasting a subtle citrusy tang. Wild thyme grows abundantly on nearby rocky plateaus, and local healers harvest it just as it flowers, believing that the aroma peaks at that moment. A fringe belief holds that rubbing thyme on your temples before sipping the brew can ward off headaches brought on by sandstorms. You tentatively rub a leaf against your forehead, half expecting a headache to materialize from thin air. Luckily, nothing dramatic happens, though you can't help but smile at how such a tiny leaf inspires grand promises. Beside the thyme sits an urn of powdered ochre clay, sourced from a dry riverbank a few miles east of the oasis. Healers use this clay as a binding agent, giving the drink body and a faint mineral earthiness that balances the date's sweetness. Mainstream studies on natural clays suggest they can help ease gastrointestinal distress by absorbing toxins, early protopharmacology in action. You dip a fingertip into the dusty ochre, feeling it slip coolly over your skin, and jokingly muse about adding clay face masks to your self-care routine. On the far end of the platform, a small bowl holds delicate petals of desert hibiscus, crimson fronds that look like tiny, dried umbrellas. Hibiscus adds both color and a slight tart note to the brew. Healers swear the petals lower blood pressure and have a resting pulse, calming effect. You lean down, letting a few petals brush across your cheek, reminding yourself that a healer's toolkit can double as a painter's palette, a playful crossover you wouldn't mind seeing in modern cooking shows. Your guide pours a short pour of filtered oasis water over the dates and thyme, immediately coaxing out plumes of fragrant steam. The mixture hisses softly, as though the ingredients themselves are sighing in relief at their reunion. You crouch low to the pot, inhaling deeply, and note how the sweet, herbal, and spicy notes swirl into a single, mellow fragrance, like the world's coziest perfume. A low hum from the nearby cistern seems to underscore the moment, giving you flashbacks to the water chamber's soft heartbeat. Now comes the alchemy, stirring. The guide hands you a slender date pit stirrer, smooth, elongated, and polished to a soft sheen. You dip it into the pot and stir clockwise, coaxing the clay to blend with the spices. You feel the gentle tug of resistance as the ochre thickens the liquid, transforming it from a tea into a gentle syrup. Historians still argue whether the stirring sequence, clockwise for healing, counterclockwise for detox, originated in Nubian tradition or was imported from Greek medical theories. Given the centuries of cross-cultural exchange along the Nile, as you stir, you can't help but think of your kitchen back home, where any rhythmically mixed drink ends up more messy than meditative. Here, the swirl is a ritual, precise, deliberate, and designed to calm both wrist and mind. You smile at the notion that you've traded your morning smoothie routine for something far more mindful, complete with its own set of unspoken rules. After several minutes, the brew reaches a gentle, glossy consistency. The guide ladles a small amount into a clay cup, steam rising in lazy, curling tendrils. You cradle the cup between your palms, feeling the warmth seep through the clay and anchor you to the moment. The first sip is like a lullaby, softly sweet from the dates, warming from the cinnamon, brightened by cardamom's glow, and rounded out by the clay's smooth earthiness. It isn't a flavor you can easily describe to someone who's never stood in a desert oasis. It's the taste of history distilled into liquid form, each sip carrying whispers of dunes, palm fronds, and starlit gatherings. The guide encourages you to close your eyes for a moment and let the brew work its magic. So you do, letting the flavors roll across your tongue, your breath slowing as each taste note passes. You imagine the dates' sugars as tiny suns, casting warmth throughout your chest, while the spices activate pathways of calm through your nerves. The clay, you think, is the unspoken hero, binding the sweetness and spice into a cohesive embrace. Around you, the healer community continues its work, apprentices grinding more time, elders checking other pots for perfect consistency, but for a few minutes, it feels like you and your cup exist in a private world. You take another slow sip and notice an almost imperceptible fizz at the edges, likely tiny bubbles trapped under the clay's surface, releasing as the liquid warms. You chuckle softly. Even ancient recipes have their little surprises. As you set the cup down, you're offered a small piece of date caramel, simply dates reduced further into a pliable candy and dusted with crushed pistachio. It's a playful palate cleanser, and you savor its dense sweetness, remarking how something so simple can thrill the senses more than any high-end chocolate bar. Before moving on, you examine a final ingredient, a sprig of desert rose, a hardy succulent known for its waxy leaves. The petals yield a light, aromatic oil when bruised, which the healers sometimes add for extra soothing effects on sore throats. A fringe belief claims it also grants clarity in dreams if you sip the brew at midnight, but you make a mental note not to try that tonight. You'd rather drift into sleep than chase prophetic visions. By now, your cup is empty, but your senses are full of scent, taste, and the comforting hum of the healer's courtyard. You breathe deeply and realize that the real power of this signature brew isn't just its ingredients, it's the slow alchemy of ritual, intention, and centuries of refinement. Each component, date, spice, clay, herb, plays its part in a symphony designed to relax body and mind. As you stand to wipe your lips, the guide hands you a small parchment scroll. It lists the day's ingredient ratios, weather notes, and even the healer's mood, a reminder that healing here is as much art as it is science. You tuck the scroll into your robe, thinking that tonight, you'll sleep with it under your pillow as a souvenir of the day's journey. You step away from the platform, carrying the memory of that first warm sip like a benediction. Ahead lies more of the healer's craft, but for now, you feel grounded, present, and surprisingly at peace, proof that a blend of dates, desert herbs, and a sprinkle of clay can become the world's most delicious lullaby. You follow the soft tap-tap of mallets echoing through the courtyard, drawn toward a low stone bench where an array of mortars and pestles lies waiting. Here, the mortar and pestle aren't mere tools, they're nearly sacred extensions of the healer's hands, each etched with symbols and worn smooth by centuries of use. Today, you'll witness how these unassuming implements transform raw desert ingredients into finely tuned remedies, one rhythmic grind at a time. The first mortar you examine is carved from a single block of basalt. Its surface is pitted from thousands of mashes, the edges rounded by the steady friction of repeated use. Locals call this specific granite mother stone, believing it retains echoes of every herb and mineral ever processed within its bowl. You run your fingertips along the rim, feeling the subtle grooves that map the mortar's history, like tree rings, but for centuries of medicinal memories. A quirky detail catches your eye. someone has scratched a tiny, nearly invisible image of a dancing ibis into the stone's inner wall, perhaps a playful signature left by a mischievous apprentice long ago. Your guide hands you a companion pestle, its handle wrapped in date palm fiber for grip. As you lift it, you notice the pestle's head is slightly flattened on one side, an intentional design difference that yields finer powder when pressed just so. You steady the pestle in your grip and let it hover above a pile of crushed desert thyme. That pile wasn't ground here, it was pre-crushed earlier, then allowed to dry in the sun. Now it's time to marry it with other ingredients. With a steady motion, you bring the pestle down into the mortar. The thyme releases a burst of citrusy aroma, filling the warm air with a scent that makes you imagine running barefoot through an herb garden. You tap again, and again, each strike echoing off the basalt with a satisfying thunk that resonates in your chest. This isn't mere manual labor, it's a dance, a call and response between tool and ingredient, stone and hand. You find your rhythm, and your thoughts begin to quiet as the sensory focus narrows to the thyme, the pestle, and the slight vibration beneath your palms. Nearby, another healer uses a smaller, porcelain mortar to pulverize powdered clay and crushed hibiscus petals. The porcelain yields a smoother paste, perfect for topical salves. You lean in to observe. The fine pink dust mixes with chalky clay, creating a pastel-hued sludge that glimmers faintly in the sun. The healer pauses to lift the mortar's rim, letting the mixture catch the light, a simple moment of pride in a craft honed over generations. Back at your mortar, your thyme has yielded its essential oils, turning from brittle shards into a sticky green paste. The next step is adding ground cardamom, cinnamon, and a pinch of black pepper. Each spice is introduced gradually, allowing you to appreciate its individual scent before it blends into the collective perfume. You mimic the guide's motions, a circular clockwise swirl. Then a few precise taps to break down any stubborn bits. Your arms grow pleasantly tired, the repetitive motion lulling you into a state of gentle calm. A light breeze carries the spice mixture's fragrance across the courtyard, drifting toward the cistern where the water hums like a distant lullaby. As the spices grind, you notice a series of small indentations around the mortar's exterior. These aren't accidental chips, they're reference marks, hand-carved guides that signal exact measurements for frequent recipes. One notch marks where the paste should rise when making headache salves, another denotes the target height for sleep-inducing tonics. You trace the indentations with your thumb, marveling at how a simple stone bowl doubles as both container and measuring instrument. Once the paste reaches the correct consistency, smooth, with just enough texture to feel lively between your fingers, the guide instructs you to transfer it to a shallow clay tray for sun-drying. You scrape the paste against the mortar's rim, admiring the silky ribbons that peel away. Placing the tray in a cluster of date palms, you watch as the afternoon sun caresses the paste, hastening evaporation and intensifying the aromatic oils. The tray sits on a stand that rocks slightly in the breeze, a gentle kinetic sculpture that ensures even drying without scorching the herbs, a deceptively simple innovation you couldn't resist adding to your mental Pinterest board. Next, you're introduced to a second mortar, a squat, hollowed-out palm stump once used by the earliest healers. Its rough bark exterior contrasts with its smooth interior, polished over centuries. This stump mortar processes tougher ingredients, date pits, dried millet grains, and the hard shells of desert seeds. You approach with a mound of broken date pits, craning your neck to peer inside. The texture reminds you of a gravel path, rough, uneven, and determined to resist standard methods. You heft a heavier pestle made from ironwood, dense, dark, and surprisingly warm to the touch after soaking in the morning sun. With the first strike, pits fracture into splinters, releasing a faint, nutty aroma you hadn't anticipated. You tap again, faster now, watching fragments cascade like brittle confetti across the stump's bowl. Gradually, the larger shards yield to your persistent strokes, becoming coarse powder. This powder, when mixed into the date and herb paste, adds body and a slow-release quality that extends the brew's soothing effects throughout the night. As you work, you notice sand grains trapped in the wood pits, remnants from past grinding sessions. The guide points out that these residual grains serve as an additional abrasive, subtly aiding future grinding. An accidental cleverness of our forebears, they muse, keeping every tool richer with every use. You pause, contemplating how well-meaning accidents in ancient crafts can outlast intentional design. Your arm starts to ache pleasantly, the kind of fatigue that lets you know you've engaged both mind and muscle. You pause to sip water from a leather flask, letting the cool liquid soothe your forearm. The gentle thunk of mortar and pestle resonates, and you find yourself humming along, an unintentional lullaby composed of stone, wood, and spice. Next, the guide demonstrates a ritual cleanse for the mortar, a swirling wash of hot water brewed from the previous night's hibiscus and thyme infusion. You pour the potion into the basalt bowl, watching it swirl amber red. Instead of rinsing, you're told to let the mixture sit for an hour. This is believed to season the stone, imparting leftover medicinal properties into future grains. It's a fringe practice, yet you can't help but appreciate the poetic logic, building layers of healing memory into the very tools themselves. You leave the wash to steep and move on to show you the mortar's apprentice, a smaller basalt bowl used to grind clay and charcoal for facial salves. You balance a pestle carved with miniature snake motifs, symbols of protection and transformation, and grind pulverized charcoal into a fine soot. The black dust billows up in a cloud that dances in the sunlight, settling into the porcelain bowl's center like a tiny eclipse. A few pinches of clay join this dark core, and the apprentice adeptly mixes the ingredients into a paste, showing you how to apply it as a soothing mask for windburned skin. Glancing back at the basalt mortar still steeping its seasoning wash, you realize that each vessel here isn't disposable or replaceable. They're revered, cared for, and woven into a continuum of healing knowledge. Apprentices polish them with date palm oil and buff them with soft cloths, ensuring each tool gains additional layers of protective sheen. You feel a pang of admiration. Tools here age like fine wine, not brittle antiques but living participants in the healing dance. Returning to your own mortar, you scrape out the final bits of thyme spice paste, the aroma still potent and comforting. You hold the bowl up to your nose, inhaling deeply, and let your mind drift on the swirl of scents. It's in these simple moments, pressing stone against spice, wood against herb, that you realize the mortar and pestle are more than utility. They're the tactile bridge between plant life and human care, between the desert's harshness and the oasis's nurture. As afternoon wanes, you arrange the tools back on the bench, aligned with almost reverential precision. Mortars and pestles of basalt, porcelain, stump wood, and ironwood stand like guardians of ancient wisdom, their surfaces gleaming with use. You step back, breathe in the mingled aromas swirling in the warm air, and feel a surprising connection to the hands that first ground dates, herbs, and clay thousands of years ago. In that moment, you understand how a simple rhythm, grind, stir, repeat, can become a meditative practice that anchors body, mind, and spirit in timeless tranquility. You wander down a winding path lined with creaking palm fronds until you reach the Nile's mist-draped bank, where the water's surface shimmers like molten silver under the midday sun. Here, the brew takes on a new dimension, infused by the river's subtle currents and wrapped in the hush of its gentle waves. You step onto a low wooden platform built over the river's edge, feeling the wood's faint sway beneath your sandals, and join the healers who prepare the signature tonic with flowing Nile water. The healer places a small clay amphora in the shallow water, anchoring it with river pebbles so it won't drift off. This amphora isn't just any jar, it's been sealed with date resin and etched with symbols denoting the exact lunar phase when it should be opened. Mainstream accounts record that ancient Nubians revered Nile water for its purity, believing it carried life-giving blessings from the river's divine source. You crouch to peer inside the amphora's neck, spotting tiny bubbles swirling, proof that the water has been fermenting just enough to develop a subtle effervescence. Nearby, a low cauldron sits on a tripod of river-washed stones. Apprentices stoke a gentle fire beneath it, using charcoal made from date pits. You watch as wisps of smoke mingle with the river's mist, forming an otherworldly haze that blurs the line between water and air. A fringe belief insists that smoke from date pit charcoal grants the brew a hint of river memory, enhancing its hydrating properties. You inhale deeply, savoring the woody aroma, and smirk at the notion that river memory could one day become a streaming service subscription. As you gather around the tripod, your guide lifts a ladle carved from ebony wood, dense, cool, and impossibly dark. With careful precision, she pours filtered oasis water into the cauldron first, followed by a stream of clear Nile water. You lean in, catching the moment the two liquids meet. They swirl together in delicate eddies before settling into seamless unity. This dual water technique melds the oasis's mineral-rich clarity with the Nile's soft current, creating a base for the date brew that is both robust and nurturing. Next, a healer adds date-infused oil extracted earlier in the day. The amber droplets fall like liquid gold, plinking gently against the water's surface. You dip a fingertip into the cauldron and taste a drop, smooth, nutty, and laced with a faint hint of river silt, as if the water itself is whispering tales of distant cataracts and hidden tributaries. A playful thought crosses your mind: river silt might be the original superfood, but somehow Jetson's smoothies missed that memo. Above the cauldron, a woven basket of fresh lotus blossoms hangs from a wooden beam. You watch as an apprentice plucks a blossom, gently crushing its petals into the mixture. The lotus imparts a faint floral sweetness and a pale pink hue that softens the brew's golden glow. You inhale the rising steam and feel a gentle calm settling in your chest, like the Nile itself is singing a lullaby. A low murmur of conversation drifts through the group, apprentices discussing the best fishing spots downstream, elders debating the upcoming harvest festival. You listen to the chatter, noting how the brew ritual doubles as a community gathering, weaving social bonds as tightly as date fibers in a palm basket. It's a living tapestry of healing and fellowship that feels miles away from any armchair webinar you've attended. Your guide then flutes a soft rhythm on a carved reed instrument, its gentle melody coaxing ripples across the cauldron's surface. Dates are added next. Clusters of sticky amber fruit are submerged whole, their skin swelling as they soak. You reach in to nudge a cluster with a wooden stir stick, marveling at how the dates puff ever so slightly, nestled within the warm water. It reminds you of tossing marshmallows into hot chocolate, only here, the treats emerge infused with centuries of healing lore. After the dates settle, the spiced paste you prepared earlier arrives on a clay tray. You scoop a heaping spoonful into the cauldron, stirring slowly in a deliberate clockwise motion. The paste dissolves gradually, color deepening from pale pink to warm tawny brown. Steam rises in lazy plumes, carrying the aroma of cinnamon, cardamom, and thyme. You close your eyes and let the scent wash over you, imagining the river's gentle current carrying away any tension in your shoulders. Meanwhile, the amphora's lid is lifted by another healer, and you watch as the lightly effervescent Nile water pours into the brew. The bubbles tickle the surface, creating a soft fizz that reminds you of a distant brook tumbling over stones. You taste a small spoonful, it's like sipping a calm sunrise, each note balanced perfectly between sweet, spicy, and mineral. You can feel the brew smoothing your thoughts, as though the river's own ebb and flow is lapping away the edges of your awareness. A quirkier moment unfolds when a young apprentice offers you a sprig of wild desert mint to garnish your tasting cup. You tuck it behind your ear and laugh. Mint in your hair might start a new oasis fashion trend, but you secretly love the playful flourish. The mint's crisp freshness cuts through the syrupy sweetness, leaving a minty afterglow that dances on your tongue. All around you, healers take turns sipping from clay cups, their expressions serene, eyes half closed. You join them, lifting your cup to your lips and letting the brew cascade across your palate. It feels like a gentle river current swirling through your mouth, carrying warmth into your chest. You take a moment to look at the sun-dappled water around you, at the palms leaning into the river's embrace, at the distant laughter echoing across the bank, and you realize you're part of something timeless, a flow of soothing ritual that spans both time and water. As the final drops of brew vanish from your cup, a ripple passes through the group, as though the river itself sighs in contentment. Healers begin to clean the cauldron with soft date palm fibers, letting the remaining heat vaporize any clinging residue. You lean back against a sun-warmed stone, letting the gentle rocking of the wooden platform lull you. The rhythmic lapping of the Nile and the soft hiss of cooling metal form a duet that feels custom-made for drifting into a gentle nap. When the amphora is resealed and the cauldron's fire cools to embers, you step off the platform, carrying a clay cup filled halfway with the day's last pour. The water's clarity mirrors the sky above, and as you sip the final taste, you sense the Nile's ancient pulse beneath your feet. The river has lent its voice to the brew, its current becoming a silent chorus in the oasis's ongoing melody. You tuck the empty cup under your arm and join the procession back to the courtyard, each footstep echoing softly against the stone path. Ahead lies the next chapter of date remedy lore, but for now, you carry the soothing river ritual within you, an unbroken thread weaving water, earth, and human touch into a lullaby for the soul. By the time you reach the courtyard again, the afternoon sun has dipped into a mellow gold, casting long shadows across the tiled ground. The air feels thicker now, but not unpleasant, like a warm blanket pulled snug around your shoulders. The breeze carries a lazy rustle of palm fronds, and somewhere in the distance, a donkey lets out a slow, contemplative bray, as if it, too, is digesting the effects of the river brew. You ease down beside a low, woven mat where several healers are preparing a paste made not for drinking, but for application, a kind of early skin salve. At first glance, it looks like a simple clay mixture, but you soon notice it sparkles faintly in the light. The base? Pulverized desert date seeds, mixed with powdered quartz and crushed rosehips. You poke at the edge with your finger, it's cool, gritty, and smells faintly of stone and citrus. An elder healer gestures for you to roll up your sleeve. You comply, and she gently dabs a small amount on the back of your hand. The texture is both soothing and a little scratchy, like an exfoliating spa mask, but invented centuries before spas became things you could yelp. The salve was traditionally used for skin ailments, cracked heels, sunburns, the occasional camel-induced rash, and was left to dry in the open air. Mainstream archaeological sources confirm the Nubians were adept at creating multi-use topicals, blending practicality with botanical knowledge. But one quirky oral tradition claims that if you left this salve out under a full moon, it would pick up night calm, a kind of lunar essence believed to quiet angry skin and, oddly, irritable goats. You pause and try not to imagine how they figured that last part out. Maybe someone's goat had really great skin. The healer explains that they would sometimes whisper affirmations while applying the salve, not spells exactly, but words chosen for their rhythm and kindness. Phrases like cool waters calm you or the wind forgets your heat are murmured as each layer is spread. You try this too, repeating a phrase in a low, steady voice, and suddenly your hands feel lighter, your breath slower. It's skin care, sure, but also a kind of lullaby for your fingers. As the salve dries to a faint shimmer, another group of healers begins to prepare for what they call the quiet hour. It's a restorative break, but also a collective ritual. Everyone lies down on low mats with herbal compresses laid across their foreheads or chests. You're handed your own, a warm pouch of date pulp, cinnamon bark, and dried blue lotus petals. You press it to your chest and instantly feel your heartbeat slow just a touch. The air fills with the rustle of linens and the soft hum of a tune, one of the older healers singing a lullaby in a dialect so old, it's practically the acoustic equivalent of falling into a hammock. You stretch out, the mat cradling your weight, and for a moment the sky above seems to swirl softly like the brew in the amphora. The courtyard fades into a palette of ochre, green, and soft amber light. You almost doze off entirely when a gentle clinking sound stirs you, small clay jars being opened for the next stage of healing. This time, the date is used not in liquid or salve form, but as incense. Dried date pits, after being used for oil or charcoal, were saved and ground into a fine powder, then pressed with sandalwood resin and shaped into cones. As one is lit nearby, the smoke curls in lazy spirals, sweet and woody with a faint undercurrent of toasted sugar. You sit up and watch the smoke twist upward, like a snake enchanted by the desert's lullaby. The scent is mellow, hypnotic, and oddly nostalgic, even if you've never smelled it before. One healer jokes that the smoke helps clear the nose ghosts, an expression you now find yourself deeply curious about, even if you're not ready to Google it. You can't help but chuckle. Nose ghosts. Add that to your list of ancient problems modern medicine still can't fix. With the incense lit, the quiet hour transitions into what the healers call skin thanking. It's a simple ritual of washing off the salve, one section of the body at a time, while reciting a blessing to each joint and limb. Elbow. Bend without burden. Wrists. Turn with kindness. Knees. Carry with grace. You follow along, whispering these odd, comforting affirmations. It's halfway between a meditation and a skincare commercial voiced by Morgan Freeman. The water used for rinsing is warm and faintly rose-colored from crushed petals. You dip a cloth into the bowl and gently wipe your hands, marveling at how soft your skin feels. Your fingertips tingle slightly, not from any sting, but from the soothing friction of ritual itself, like your body is waking up gently from a long, happy nap. You catch sight of a young apprentice rubbing date oil into her scalp while another braids her hair. The oil acts as both conditioner and scalp treatment, believed to soothe the storm in one's crown. You grin at the phrase. It's poetic, and frankly, might be the perfect name for an indie rock album. As you comb your fingers through your own hair, a drop of the oil clings to your fingertip. You press it behind your ear, and a subtle warmth lingers, smelling faintly of roasted almonds and honey. A bell chimes once, deep, sonorous, and reverent. It signals the closing of the ritual. Everyone begins to stretch, slowly, languidly, like cats uncurling in late sunlight. You rise, joints creaking pleasantly, and share soft smiles with the healers around you. There is no applause, no fanfare, just the kind of stillness that wraps itself around your bones like a woven shawl. You help tidy up, folding mats, stacking bowls, gathering leftover lotus petals to dry for later use. There's a quiet rhythm to it all, a slow choreography of returning things to their place. One healer hands you a cloth-wrapped parcel, a single date pit, polished and etched with a tiny spiral. For protection, she says, or at least to keep your fingers busy. You smile and tuck it into your sash like a lucky pebble. By the time the courtyard empties, the sun has begun to slide behind the hills, casting golden streaks across the earth. The shadows are long and soft now, more like whispers than shapes. You take one last look at the space, now quiet again, but humming with the faint afterglow of salves and laughter and that odd little moment when your soul briefly wore a face mask made of starlight and crushed seeds. By the time the moon rises, pale and full like a polished shell, you're back at the edges of the village, walking beside a series of carved mud brick canals that gently usher water from the Nile into the outer gardens. The night air is cooler now, but still carries the tang of riverbank silt and crushed herbs from the healer's quarters. You stretch your arms, fingers still faintly perfumed with date oil, and follow the murmuring flow of the irrigation ditches. Tonight, it seems, your lesson turns to the plants themselves, the other half of the healing duet. While the desert date fruit was revered, it was rarely used in isolation. The Nubian healers were firm believers in the harmony of elements, heat and cool, sweet and bitter, fruit and root. The gardens you stroll past are living apothecaries, carefully curated over generations, and maintained by hands that know precisely when to harvest and when to let a plant sleep a little longer. You kneel by a thicket of what looks like wild mint, but smells sharper, almost citrusy. This is desert lemon balm, another favorite of Nubian healers, often added to date-based infusions to wake up the brew, as they put it. You pluck a leaf and rub it between your fingers. The scent clings like gossip at a village well, bright, a little mischievous, and hard to ignore. Nearby, a squat tree with silvery leaves bears clusters of green pods. Morinam, known as the miracle tree. It's used for everything from thickening stews to reducing fevers. You watch a young apprentice gently grind the pods with a flat stone, adding them to a vat of heated date mash. She explains that this combination was used to treat stomach ailments, particularly the ones caused by overeating during feast days. Apparently, even the ancient world had food comas. A healer beckons you over to another garden bed, this one filled with pale blue-green stalks that sway like dancers. Fenugreek. You've heard of it in passing, mostly in the context of oddly expensive health supplements and trendy urban smoothies. But here, it's soaked overnight in a syrup made from mashed desert dates and fig resin. The result? A gentle digestive tonic that was said to calm the belly and clear the voice. Singers and orators drank it before long recitations, though it's unclear if the effects were more physical or placebo. Either way, it makes you wonder if TED Talks would go better with a little Nubian brew. As you wander, you pass a cluster of what at first looks like decorative reeds. Only to learn it's a patch of papyrus, less for writing here, and more for steeping. A small amount, added to a cooled date infusion, was said to steady the heartbeat during emotional distress. One healer likens it to hugging from the inside, and you try not to melt completely on the spot. Honestly, who needs pharmaceuticals when you have poetic metaphors and a pot of mashed fruit? The garden is alive not only with plants but with stories. Each leaf, seed, and bark carries centuries of whispered instructions. You hear one tale, passed down through healer apprentices, about a date-based poultice mixed with crushed scarab shell, allegedly used once to cure a queen's mysterious rash. Historians still argue whether this queen ever existed or whether the scarab part was added for dramatic flair. Either way, you make a mental note, maybe not all remedies should be revived. A little further on, you find a patch of tiny white blossoms that look almost like stars caught in a net of vines. This is Nile jasmine. The flowers are picked in the early morning and stirred gently into thick date syrup as it cools, creating a kind of medicinal jam. It was applied to the temples to ease migraines, and sometimes smeared on children's foreheads during stormy nights. Not because it worked scientifically, necessarily, but because a cool, sweet-smelling balm applied by someone who cares deeply. Well, that works in its own way. You sit down by a low bench set beside a patch of lavender, which has crept over from further west and now flourishes under the moonlight. A healer hands you a cup of warm water steeped with date slices, fennel seeds, and just a single jasmine blossom. You sip it slowly, it's like drinking a memory of sunlight. The flavors blend with gentle insistence, no single taste overpowering the others. There's a quiet humility to it, like the tea knows you've had a long day and doesn't want to cause a fuss. Across the garden, two apprentices are whispering while collecting dew with linen cloths. You're told this dew is often saved and mixed into particularly delicate remedies, those for infants, elders, or the deeply weary. One legend even claims dew gathered on the night of the harvest moon holds the soul of the garden and can bring peace to troubled dreams. You resist the urge to bottle some yourself. Not because you don't want it, but because you'd rather believe that magic like that only works if you don't try too hard to keep it. There's something calming about the pace here. No one rushes. No one checks the time. Things are ready when they're ready. Remedies are brewed until they feel right. Leaves are harvested only when they lean into the hand. And sleep. Well, sleep is treated with just as much respect as illness. You stretch your legs and lean back on your elbows, staring up at a sky that's turned almost navy, scattered with pinholes of starlight. Somewhere, a healer hums a tune that sounds older than the date trees themselves. You let the sound carry you, notes curling like incense, floating through the night air. From the corner of your eye, you spot a shallow bowl beside the jasmine bush. It's filled with a syrupy mixture, thick with date and fig, glinting in the moonlight. Written in the dust nearby with a fingertip, for sweet dreams only. You smile, dip a finger into the syrup, and taste. It's like swallowing warmth, like the dessert version of a lullaby. You lean your head back against a woven cushion and close your eyes. You're not asleep yet. But you're certainly not awake in the usual way, either. By the time you wake, or rather, rise slowly from your semi-dreaming sprawl by the jasmine bush, the moon has inched higher, casting a soft silver sheen over everything. You stretch, limbs relaxed, bones humming with that specific brand of quiet contentment that only ancient gardens and date syrup dreams can offer. Tonight's next stop is just a short walk along a gravel path lined with clay lanterns. You follow the glowing trail until you reach a small domed building, half sunk into the earth, its walls cool and dimpled with age. This is the apothecary's archive, not for scrolls or ledgers, but for the other kind of memory, scent, flavor, ritual. You're led in by a healer with laugh lines deeper than the Nile. Her voice as soft as the sandals shuffling beside you. Inside, rows upon rows of tightly sealed jars line the walls. Each is marked with a symbol instead of words, an eye, a wave, a crescent moon, a goat's hoof. The symbols stand for the remedy's purpose or its original storyteller. You're told that recipes were rarely written down fully. Instead, a mixture of oral instruction and symbol memory kept the knowledge alive. It was a way of honoring both science and spirit. After all, a remedy isn't just a list of ingredients, it's a mood, a method, a rhythm you feel in your hands. Your guide lifts a lid from one jar marked with a simple spiral. Inside is a thick paste, dark golden brown, with bits of crushed seeds still visible. It smells faintly of dates, yes, but also of ground nutmeg, dried lime peel, and something smokier. The base is roasted desert date mash, but this one is aged in a gourd for several weeks before use. It was a specialty reserved for healers recovering from their own ailments, a kind of doctor's remedy that included both physical and emotional restoratives. As you lean in to smell it again, your guide chuckles. Careful, she says, you'll start remembering things you haven't lived. You're not entirely sure if she's joking, but you nod solemnly anyway. On a low table in the center of the room sits a stone slab used for grinding. There's a small pile of dried desert dates beside it, darker than usual and slightly shriveled. These are twilight dates, harvested just after sunset and used in remedies believed to help with transitions, birth, death, long journeys, or even just the end of a very difficult day. Historians still argue whether this practice was symbolic or rooted in some ancient chronobotanical wisdom. Was it the timing of the harvest that made them more potent? Or simply the sense that something gathered under moonlight must hold more mystery? Either way, you admire the poetic symmetry of it. Night dates for night thoughts. You watch as another healer begins to grind a twilight date with a pinch of powdered lavender bark and 2 drops of something from a smoky little vial. Soot ash, she says. Not actual soot, thankfully, but a name for the charred rind of a specific desert fruit. It's said to temper overthinking. You're tempted to ask for a jar of it to go. The mixture is formed into a small pellet and placed on a round leaf. This is a dream stone, meant to be held, not eaten, while sleeping. It's gently warmed in the hand first, its scent released with the sleeper's breath. You roll one in your palm, feeling the soft grit of the paste against your skin. And you do notice something. Maybe it's the warmth of the leaf, maybe it's just the setting, but your thoughts begin to slow, like a cart rolling to a halt at the end of a long, dusty road. One healer tells you a story of an old man who carried his dream stone so faithfully that it wore a groove in his palm. Another tells you of a child who buried hers under the fig tree after a nightmare, and never had one again. There's no scientific proof for any of it, of course, but then again, not everything that heals needs a double-blind study. A soft drumbeat echoes from a nearby room. You're led through a narrow passageway into a circular chamber where a group of healers sits cross-legged, gently tapping rhythm sticks and swaying. This is a nightly ritual, a kind of story song blending chants, whispered wishes, and sleep rhythms. The lyrics aren't always literal. Some sound like weather reports from dreams. The moon folds into itself tonight / stars drift in cinnamon wind. You don't understand it all, but it doesn't matter. Your body does, they invite you to join. You're handed a pair of palm-woven rattles filled with dried date seeds. As you shake them, the seeds clack in a soft, rustling rhythm, like rain falling through reeds. You match the beat slowly, the way you might drift into someone else's breathing. For a moment, the sound swells and the room disappears. There is only rhythm, breath, and that sweet hint of date dust in the air. When the song ends, no one claps. No one needs to. The silence afterward feels as sacred as the music. You're given a small cup of cool water with crushed mint and a single desert date slice, then led outside, back into the silver-swept courtyard. Someone's left a basin of warm water by the steps. You're invited to wash your hands and face, another nightly practice. The water smells faintly of marula and old roses. You splash it across your cheeks, and the coolness travels through your bones like a sigh you didn't know you were holding. You sit on the edge of the step, dripping quietly, feeling your breath match the rhythm of crickets and river wind. You think of everything you've touched tonight, salves and leaves and rhythm sticks and dream stones, and for a moment it feels like the world itself is softening. Edges blur. Time blinks slowly. Even your thoughts stretch out like sleepy cats, curling into loops of memory and quiet. In the distance, a goat sneezes. You smile, remembering the nose ghosts. The stars are stacked overhead now, layered and luminous, like grains of white sand spilled across obsidian cloth. You move slowly, trailing your fingers along the cool adobe walls as you wander back through the healer's compound. Tonight's rhythm is unhurried, like molasses in winter or a camel deciding whether to stand. Everything pulses in halftime, including you. You're led to a smaller courtyard tucked between two wind-worn structures, both built low to the ground and curved like turtle shells. This was the brewing zone, not for meals or perfumes, but for deep brews, as they're called. These weren't rushed. In fact, many took days, sometimes even weeks, to prepare. The goal wasn't to shock the body into healing, but to remind it how to remember wholeness. A whisper, not a slap. The Nubians, it seems, were pioneers in the art of the gentle nudge. Tonight's brews are resting. You see them in their wide clay vessels, some wrapped in woven cloth, others buried halfway in the ground to hold a steady temperature. There's something deeply satisfying about their dormancy. They look like they're dreaming. A healer named Tana invites you to sit on a low mat beside a fire pit, where a flat stone griddle has been warming. From a shallow dish, she scoops a thick paste the color of golden earth, date, tamarind, and a trace of fermented millet. This will be the base for tonight's topical tonic, a sleep balm applied to the soles of the feet and wrists. You raise an eyebrow at that, and Tana smirks. All good things enter through small doors, she says. You can't argue with logic like that. As she mixes the paste, she hums a quiet, repetitive melody. It's less a song than a lullaby meant for the ingredients themselves. In this tradition, the act of brewing is as much about mood as measurement. Angry hands spoil the remedy. Distracted minds dilute the magic. The paste responds best to joy, or at least the calm imitation of it. You do your best not to think about your unanswered emails. The paste begins to bubble slightly. She stirs it slowly with a carved stick, explaining how desert date pulp, when gently heated, thickens into a salve without losing its sweetness. It's one of the rare fruits that retains its scent even when cooked down. That scent, earthy, faintly smoky, with a ghost of caramel, was believed to guide the soul gently back to the body. You wonder if aromatherapy companies today even know how late they are to the party. Once it's ready, Tana pours the paste into a long, narrow gourd and seals the top with beeswax. Rest it overnight, she says. Even sleep balm needs sleep. She hands you a cooled version from the night before and invites you to try some on your own wrists. You smear a thin ribbon across your skin, and the warmth that seeps in is subtle, but steady. Like sinking into a bath that's just the right temperature. Like having someone brush your hair with warm hands. You sigh so audibly that even the courtyard goat glances at you. Next, she shows you a drying rack filled with tiny bundles tied in palm thread. Each contains a different herb or bark, some to be steeped into tea, others to be powdered into pastes, and a few that are only for smoke. You raise an eyebrow again. Smoke. She explains these were not for inhaling, but for smudging over pillows, blankets, and sometimes even doorways. Sleep, in Nubian medicine, was seen as a threshold. And thresholds, of course, require guards. She lights a pinch of dried henna root and swings the scented smoke toward you. The smell is strangely familiar, earthy with a sweet twist, like cinnamon met a campfire. It was believed to ward off noisy dreams, the kind that wake you with a start and leave your heart racing. In modern terms, we might say nightmares. But you like the phrase noisy dreams. It feels gentler, like you're simply asking your subconscious to please keep the volume down. You ask if desert date remedies were ever used outside the Nubian communities, and Tana nods. Traders from up the Nile carried pressed date cakes with them for digestion, and healers along caravan routes exchanged recipes like gossip, only with fewer consequences. If you told someone your uncle's date brew cured hiccups, next month it would be famous for curing hiccups and heartache, she says, laughing. That's how medicine grows, like rumor, only stickier. She brings out one final jar, darker than the others, sealed tight with 3 layers of waxed cloth. This, she says solemnly, is for the sleepless. You perk up, finally, a VIP category just for you. She explains it's a reduction of dates boiled with fig leaf, ash of wild barley, and a splash of fermented cactus milk. It smells worse than it tastes, she admits. You lean in and immediately recoil. It smells like something a goat might regret eating. Historians still argue whether this one worked. Or just knocked people out from sheer revulsion, she jokes. But she adds that it was effective in calming the nerves, especially for those who couldn't quiet their thoughts. Not exactly NyQuil, but probably a lot friendlier to the liver. You don't try it. But you respect it. The fire is dying down now. You stretch again, the balm on your wrist still softly warming your skin, and feel your entire body sink with the deep silence of this place. No buzz of traffic, no electric hum, just the occasional rustle of leaves and the lazy blink of the stars. Someone hands you a woven pouch before you leave the courtyard. Inside is a tiny square of cloth soaked in the sleep balm and wrapped around a few grains of roasted barley and a date seed. A pocket anchor, they call it. You're supposed to keep it under your pillow, or in your sleeve, or simply in your hand when dreams feel a little too sharp around the edges. You close your fingers around it and feel the faintest crinkle of the dried cloth, the warmth of memory held tight. Back under the stars, your footsteps drift more than land. You're not entirely walking, you're floating just above the warm soil, buoyed by the soft hum of past remedies and the ghost of fig leaves. The courtyard opens into a winding corridor flanked by woven reed walls, the scent of dried herbs hanging in the air like friendly ghosts. You follow it toward a round stone hut glowing faintly from within. Inside, the space is dim and round, the walls painted in spirals and half-moons. Low shelves circle the room, each cradling bundles of cloth, little terracotta jars, and stacks of palm paper. This is the Dreamwork hut, part apothecary, part therapist's office, part, well, dream detective agency. Really. You settle onto a cushion that puffs up around you like a sleepy loaf of bread. A healer with a necklace of date pits and blue beads sits across from you. She introduces herself as Kalma and offers you a shallow bowl of warm drink. It's thick, a bit grainy, and smells like date syrup met a mushroom. You sip it slowly. It tastes earthy, oddly nutty, with a bitter tail that somehow fits. Helps bring dreams forward, Kalma says, but only the ones you're ready for. You don't mention the raccoon in space dream from last week. Maybe not quite ready for that one. Kalma asks if you remember last night's dream. You shake your head, and she smiles like she expected that. That's good, she says. Means your mind's finally found a quiet hallway. You didn't know you were looking for one, but here we are. She invites you to close your eyes, and as you do, she taps gently on a shallow clay drum, steady, slow, like someone mimicking a heartbeat through thick wool. As she drums, she begins a story, not loud, not dramatic, but lilting. It's about a goat who wandered into a date grove and fell asleep for 100 days, waking up only to find that it now understood every language spoken by birds. The goat, naturally, became the kingdom's translator, but eventually retired due to overwork and started a dream counseling business. You're not sure where the story ends and your thoughts begin to drift, but it's seamless, like fog melting into dew. One corner of the hut is reserved for what Kalma calls memory maps. It's not exactly what it sounds like. These are bundles of ingredients tied to small moments, a first birth, a strange illness, a night when someone couldn't stop crying. Each one is labeled with the date and the dream someone had afterward. Kalma says dream work was often used alongside remedies, not just for interpretation but for diagnosis. A sick body sends messages, she says. We just forget to check the mail. You browse a few memory bundles. One is tied with desert sage and sun-bleached bone. The attached note reads, "Woke 3 times. Dream of feathers falling into water. No pain after 4th night." Another smells strongly of mint and ash. The note simply reads, "Dreamed of a laughing jackal. Woke up healed." You find one with a date pit sewn into the fabric, wrapped in thin silver thread. The tag is faded, but the words "lost voice returned" are just visible. Kalma notices you holding it and nods approvingly. That one, she says, reminds us that healing isn't always about pain going away. Sometimes it's about something coming back. She pauses then, tapping the drum a little softer. People think dreams are like clouds, she says. But really, they're like seeds. Some bloom fast. Some wait 100 years. You nod, unsure whether she's still talking about dreams or desert dates. Maybe both. Either way, it feels right. The fire pit in the center of the hut burns low, crackling softly. Kalma adds a pinch of dried marula bark and a piece of date palm frond. The smoke curls upward, catching the light like a ghost doing ballet. You breathe it in slowly. It smells like memory. Like stories. Like something you knew once and forgot on purpose. Kalma brings out a final bundle, this one older, wrapped in a woven pouch that looks like it might unravel if you exhaled too hard. She unties it gently, revealing a date pit carved with a spiral. They say this came from a healer who dreamed of a remedy before she'd ever seen the illness, she whispers. When the sickness arrived a year later, she was already ready. You both stare at the pit for a long moment. It's not magical. It's just old. But that's enough. You ask if anyone still makes remedies based on dreams. Kalma shrugs. Some do. Some say the dreams have stopped talking. I think we just stopped listening as slowly as we used to. She offers you a palm leaf booklet filled with charcoal drawings. Each one is a dream someone remembered well enough to draw. You flip through quietly, a horse made of smoke. A boy with stars for eyes, a river made entirely of sighs. You're not sure when your eyes start to close again, or when your hands relax into your lap, warm from the cup you forgot you were holding. Kalma's voice continues, somewhere between lullaby and wind. You sleep, briefly. Or maybe not. But when you open your eyes again, there's a tiny folded cloth in your hand, tied with a single thread of date fiber. No one saw who gave it to you. Kalma just smiles. Outside, the air has cooled. You step into it gently, walking as if your feet remember an older rhythm. The stars are exactly where you left them. Which is oddly reassuring. The night is deeper now, like a room with the curtains drawn and a cat snoring somewhere nearby. You feel softer, as though your bones are humming a bedtime tune. And just like that, you begin to wonder, not if dreams heal, or how, but when you might be ready to listen more slowly again. You wake, if you can call it that, at the edge of dawn. The sky has just begun to consider the idea of pink. Not sunrise yet, just the suggestion of warmth, like the whisper of coffee in another room. Your breath fogs lightly as you step outside the Dreamwork hut, and you stretch in that deeply satisfying way where every vertebra pops like a little thank you note. The compound is hushed, but not empty. A few early risers shuffle across the courtyard, some carrying water jugs, others cradling baskets of herbs still damp with dew. A child yawns so wide it looks like she might swallow a cloud. You follow the path beyond the outer wall, where the ground begins to slope gently toward the riverbank. This morning, you're headed to visit the collectors, the unsung, dust-covered foragers who gather wild ingredients for the healer's brews. They're rarely mentioned in the stories, but without them, no concoction could ever be made. It's a bit like forgetting to thank your toes for walking you home. Your guide for the morning is a boy named Idris. He can't be more than 14, but walks with the assured calm of someone who knows where every stone is supposed to be. He carries a short blade, a woven satchel, and a wooden staff that's taller than he is. For snakes, he says, then winks. And sometimes for dramatic effect. Idris leads you past clusters of acacia trees and stubby desert shrubs until you reach a grove of date palms you somehow didn't notice yesterday. These aren't the cultivated rows near the oasis, they're wild, gnarled, older, a bit judgmental in shape. Some lean like they're eavesdropping. Others twist like dancers caught mid-turn. This grove, Idris explains, is one of the oldest. Local stories claim some of these trees were planted by ancestors who healed with song and starlight. Not provable, Idris admits, but very popular. He shows you how to spot a ripe desert date, not just from the color, which should be a rich brown-black, but from the way it feels. A ripe one gives just a little when you press. Not too soft. Not too firm. Like a good pillow or a well-meaning lie. You reach up to pluck one and nearly fall over. Idris catches your arm, laughing. Balance is also part of the training, he says. Apparently, desert date foraging doubles as a spiritual core workout. As you collect, Idris shows you the tiny insects that live inside the bark, some of which help regulate the date palm's growth. They don't get credit, he says. They're like understudies that never get to take the stage. You pocket that line for later. It feels like a metaphor for something. Maybe everything. Further on, Idris points out another lesser-known healing plant, the camelthorn. Very sharp. Very rude. But soak the pods, and you've got a cure for indigestion and melancholy. You ask if those two things often go together, and he nods solemnly. Absolutely. Most tummy troubles are just feelings that got confused and headed south. He digs up a root with the skill of someone who's done it 1,000 times. It's a type of desert onion, small and surprisingly fragrant. The bulb, he explains, is often fermented with dates to create a paste used for sore joints. Stinks terribly, he says. But so do most uncles, and we love them anyway. The sun peeks over the horizon now, casting long golden fingers across the ground. Shadows stretch and yawn like old cats. Idris squints toward the east. Time to head back. The ground gets cocky when it warms up. Everything hides better. As you walk back, he tells you how collectors are trained to listen to plants. Not in a mystical way, though some believe in that, but more in the sense of watching how animals interact with them. Birds never peck sick fruit, he says. Be like birds. But maybe snack less. Back at the compound, Idris unloads the morning's haul. A healer greets him with a nod, then carefully inspects each plant, muttering approvingly. The date bundle you gathered is set aside for drying, it'll likely end up in a tea or poultice in the coming week. You feel oddly proud. Like a very minor assistant to someone very, very competent, you sit for a moment beside the storage hut. The morning's heat is just starting to rise, like steam off a cup. There's a calm satisfaction in the air, a sense of rhythm, of systems in place, of small, careful work that matters whether anyone claps or not. You realize you haven't checked the time once. That's probably a good thing. Someone hands you a mug of slightly cooled date brew. This one mixed with mint and a whisper of lemon balm. It tastes like the sun kissing your tongue after a nap. You close your eyes and lean back against the wall. The mug warms your palms, and your breath slows without needing to be asked. For a moment, you imagine staying here, learning the plants, listening to the goats, slowly earning your way into the quiet science of helping others sleep through the night. The thought is almost dreamy enough to drift on, but not quite. When you stand again, your legs are loose, your shoulders light. You wave to Idris, who's already halfway up a tree for one last date. He waves back with one hand, casually balanced like it's no big deal. It probably isn't. For him, you walk back to the main compound, steps soft, mind quieter than it's been in a long while. The healers are beginning to stir again. More brews are being stirred, more roots washed, more dreams recorded, and somewhere, under the morning sky, a little jar of date balm begins to warm on a stone shelf, waiting for its turn to help someone else find the quiet hallway inside their dreams. Midday arrives not with a shout, but a sigh, a gentle press of warmth against your neck, a shimmer in the distance that makes you question whether the rocks are waving at you. The Nubian compound slows down. People speak in softer tones. Even the goats seem to tiptoe, as if everyone collectively agreed not to ruffle the air. You've spent the morning among gatherers and brewers, but now you're invited to witness something far more subtle, how the remedies are stored, preserved, and, perhaps most fascinatingly, how they're told. Your guide this time is Muna, a soft-spoken elder with more smile lines than hair. She doesn't speak often, but when she does, you lean in like you're about to be handed the final clue to a mystery you didn't know you were solving. Her walking stick has etchings all along it, date pits, stars, fish, crescents, like a portable archive written in symbols. Muna leads you to the storeroom, a low, cool building half buried in the sand, designed to keep things as tempered as possible without magic or machinery. Inside, it smells like a spice merchant's daydream. You pick up notes of cardamom, tamarind, date syrup, charcoal, and something that could be ancient garlic or just really intense wisdom. Lined up along the curved walls are jars, bundles, wrapped gourds, and paper scrolls tied with string. No labels. No neat little tags. Instead, each item is part of a story chain, a verbal system of cataloging where each item's use, history, and recipe is remembered through song, rhyme, or narrative. Muna hums softly and gestures to a small gourd painted with faded stripes. This one, she says, is for babies who forget how to sleep. You warm the oil, rub it behind their ears, and tell them the story of the sleepy turtle. She doesn't elaborate. You don't press. Some things aren't meant to be Googled. Next, she lifts a tightly sealed pot. Date salve, mixed with lion's tail root. Used for wounds that won't quiet down. You wonder how many wounds that includes: skin, ego, heart. Probably all of the above. She points out a jar of blackened, waxy paste. You ask what it's for. Muna smiles. Argument balm. You rub it into your palms before a hard conversation. Helps you speak with less heat. You ask if it works. She shrugs. Sometimes. Depends on whether you want to speak gently, or just want to win. In a far corner sits a small altar with offerings, bundles of dried herbs, beads, polished stones, and, of course, date pits arranged in spirals. This is where remedies are retired. Muna explains. When an ingredient stops working or a recipe becomes irrelevant, it's given back to the earth. Nothing is discarded casually. Even out-of-use medicine gets a send-off, like a beloved teacher going quiet. You ask how they remember everything without written instructions. Muna chuckles and pats her chest. Memory doesn't live in paper. It lives in people. And people pass it along with warmth. Then she pauses and taps her temple. Also, we play a lot of memory games. She invites you to try one. She lists 4 ingredients: desert date, crushed myrrh, acacia sap, and powdered ash fish scale, and asks you to remember their uses based on a short story she tells about a woman who lost her voice during a sandstorm but found it again by singing to a dried tree. Somehow, it works. You remember each ingredient's purpose, because now they're connected to a face, a voice, and a windstorm. Before you leave the storeroom, Muna insists you try lifting one of the larger gourd jars. You try. You grunt. You fail. Muna snorts. That one's empty. Just checking your commitment. You laugh, and she smiles. Most healing starts when you laugh, she says. Even if it's at yourself. As the sun leans westward, you return to the communal courtyard, where midday meals are being prepared. Nothing fancy, just flatbread, lentils with date vinegar, and a salad of wild greens sprinkled with dried figs and crushed seed. You eat slowly, as one must when everything tastes like memory. Someone passes around small cups of a chilled brew made from fermented date syrup and tamarind pulp. It's tangy, sweet, slightly fizzy, like the desert's version of a gentle energy drink. You sip and watch a dog nap in the shade, twitching occasionally like it's chasing something delightful in its dreams. A young apprentice healer approaches, holding something behind her back. She reveals a small clay charm carved in the shape of a palm leaf. For you, she says shyly. You watched and listened. So the compound thought you should carry something with you. You turn the charm in your hand. It's smooth, warm from her touch. On one side, the Nubian symbol for quiet healing. On the other, a tiny spiral, like the ones you saw on the date pits. You nod, too moved to say anything clever. She runs off before you can thank her, laughing at nothing in particular. You lean back, palms in the sand. The day is slipping toward softness again. A breeze picks up. Somewhere in the distance, a goat sneezes dramatically. The healer across the courtyard begins preparing the final remedies of the day. Some are for burns. Some for stomach upset. Some, your favorite kind, for people who just can't seem to unthink at night. You know the feeling. Probably why you're here, you wonder, as you watch the date syrup simmer in its little pot, how many of these remedies are still used today, maybe not in name, but in echo. A tea, a story, a hug at the right time. Modern medicine may have pills, scans, and lasers, but it doesn't always know how to whisper to your dreams. And as the sun prepares to tuck itself in behind the dunes, you find yourself blinking slower, thinking rounder, and smiling for no particular reason. Except maybe gratitude, for the hands that brew, the voices that remember, and the trees that keep standing, even when no one claps. The afternoon light grows soft, golden like melted honey, as you follow a narrow path leading away from the healer's compound toward the sun-scorched hills. Your footsteps make faint impressions in the sand, destined to vanish with the next breeze, just as many of these practices nearly vanished under shifting empires and hot winds of change. Tonight, you're tracing the story of decline and rediscovery, an arc as old as the oldest date palm itself. You pause at a crumbling watchtower, its mud brick walls mottled with age. Villagers say it once guarded caravan routes that carried date remedies as far as the Levant. Over time, invasions, religious shifts, and the allure of new medicines reduced these routes to dust. You lean your palm against the tower's cool stone, imagining camel trains trundling past, bells tinkling as healers offered vials of date-infused tonics to weary traders. beyond the tower lies a valley where date palms grow wild. Yet here, many trees stand unharvested, their fruit left to rot on the ground. The art of careful propagation, tapping offshoots, steering irrigation, fell out of daily practice when central authority fractured and healers fled or converted to urban trades. Historians still argue whether this decline stemmed more from political upheaval or climatic shifts that made water management impossible under older systems. You kneel beside a palm that still stands tall. Its trunk bears a ring of ancient harvest scars, a testament to centuries of care. A local elder once told you that when the declines began, people forgot how to read those scars, lost the rhythm of harvest season, the timing that protected the tree's health. What remained was survival, not stewardship. You reach out, tracing the bark, and feel the faint thrum of resilience beneath your fingers. As the sun dips, you arrive at a hidden spring whose flow once powered a network of small aqueducts feeding the grove. Now, only a trickle remains. Yet in recent decades, a few dedicated scholars and local families have begun restoring sections of the cisterns, clearing silt, and repairing reed filters. They've reintroduced heirloom date varieties, propagating offshoots with care your guide calls archaeobotanical love. You step into the cool spray of the spring, and for a moment it's as if time reverses, the oasis spirit stirring, waking from slumber to welcome renewed attention. You scoop up water and drink. It tastes both ancient and hopeful, carrying the memory of lost groves and the promise of revival. Further along, you come upon an informal classroom beneath a cluster of palms. Elder healers sit in a circle with young apprentices, some locals, others visiting scholars dusted with academic rigor. A chart made of palm frond strips hangs at the back, listing date varieties alongside medicinal properties. It's the blueprint of rediscovery, mapping old knowledge onto new frameworks. One of the elders presents a healing brew to the group. It's composed of dates, desert thyme, indigenous fenugreek, and a whisper of river salt, all steeped in moonlit water harvested during a recent full moon. Students carefully record temperature, steep times, and flavor notes alongside traditional chants. You listen as they debate how to honor the old rites while ensuring reproducibility by modern standards. Historians still argue whether codifying these oral practices risks sterilizing their spirit or preserving them for future generations, and you can sense both sides in the circle's low murmur. As evening deepens, you walk to a clearing where a small festival is underway. Women in embroidered robes dance around a fire, weaving date palm fronds into garlands. Children chase fireflies, their laughter bright as sparklers. Stalls offer fresh date dishes, stuffed dates with goat cheese, fermented date wines, candied date blossoms. You sample each, savoring how the humble fruit has found new life in culinary creativity. You pause by a stall where a seamstress sells small sachets of dried date flowers and thyme. She explains that these restoration bundles are meant to be hung near windows to diffuse calming scents and remind people of their healing heritage. You nod, thinking how small acts can spark broader revival, like planting a single offshoot and watching it grow into a grove. Nearby, a historian reads aloud from a tattered ledger, translating medieval Nubian scripts. His voice, rough with excitement, echoes, "In the year of the silver flood, we blessed the date harvest with prayers and fermented must." You close your eyes, letting the words swirl into the night air, carrying echoes of lost eras. The festival's final ritual invites everyone to release palm fronds into the fire, each inscribed with a personal wish for healing, of self, of community, of forgotten traditions. You scratch your own phrase into a slender frond, "May these sands remember the touch of many hands." You toss it into the flames, watching sparks spiral heavenward, tiny embers caught in the rising warmth. The fire crackles, matching the pulse of your heart. Around you, people murmur, exchange smiles, and remember. In this moment of communal remembrance, decline and rediscovery converge into a living continuum. The old practices breathe anew, carried by fresh voices and renewed devotion. As the fire dwindles to soft embers, you feel the night fold around you like a date's silky flesh, protective, nourishing, and infinitely patient. You realize that decline is never the end, and rediscovery is always possible when hands, hearts, and memories unite. Now, as the embers fade to glowing whispers, let your thoughts drift like a single palm frond riding a gentle current. You've witnessed rituals reborn, trees reawakened, and the tender hands of tomorrow's healers cradling ancient wisdom. No hurry here, only the soft promise that knowledge, like a date pit buried in hopeful soil, can sprout again when tended with care. Imagine the desert night air cool against your skin. Stars blinking overhead in silent reassurance, and the faint echo of distant drums lulling you toward restorative sleep. Each breath you take is a quiet blessing, connecting you to every hand that ground dates, whispered chants, and drank of healing water across millennia. Feel the steady anchor of the earth beneath you, holding both memory and possibility. Let the warmth of those final flames settle deep in your chest. Release any tension with each exhale, imagining it dissolving into the sand, leaving only calm in its wake. Inhale the soft scent of thyme and date blossom, carrying the gentle hum of community and continuity. As your eyelids grow heavy, trust that tomorrow's sunrise will bring new promise, fresh sprouts of remembrance woven into daily life. And now, dear listener, allow your mind to soften completely. You are held, in heritage, in nature's rhythms, and in the unbroken thread of human care that binds desert palms to healing hands. Rest here, cradled by centuries of gentle rituals, until sleep arrives like a trusted friend. Sweet dreams.